Is MCC. They were kind enough to let us use this space because our air conditioner is defunct right now, under repair. Plus, we've had space issue. We've been very well attended the past few weeks. So we are very fortunate to be given the privilege of having all of our teacher, almost everyone in this room has learned under Professor Omer Mozaffar, who is the chaplain at Loyola, who has taught at Islamic centers throughout Chicago, DePaul, University of Chicago, everywhere. Yeah, so it's like the list is long and long. So his speech will be from Selfie to Selfless, and this is in keeping with the theme that we've been going with, the pull between individualism versus our service to community. So with that, I will pass it on to Professor Omer Mozaffar.
Thank you very much. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. We express our praise and gratitude to Allah Ta'ala. We seek blessings on the Prophet, peace be upon him. To really make this whole topic work, what I'd like every one of us to do right now is to take a selfie. Okay, let's all do it. Let's do as many group selfies as we can right now, all at the same time. So it's going to be a bunch of people, a bunch of photos of a bunch of people taking selfies. So let's do this really fast. Do it whatever way you want. Get everyone to look. Let me pull up mine. All right. Okay, everybody. Okay, if you don't want to be in my selfie, just cover your face.
I don't think I'm in it. I don't think I have to. It's like the aisle.
A couple.
Yeah.
Got my shoulder.
You're not in it.
Get my ear. Okay, having said that, let me pull up I have to pull up a per timetable so I know how many minutes I have left. Okay, so having said that, why do we take selfies? Anyone tell me?
Feel good about yourself.
Okay, so we take a selfie to feel good about ourselves. What else? Why else do we take selfies?
To get compliments from other people.
Yeah, to get compliments from other people. Why else? Why else do we take selfies?
Get married.
To get married. How's that worked out for you, Muhammad? Yes, ma'am. Why else do we take selfies? Okay, to get people to leave you alone. Very interesting. All right. Think about this. Think about this. When you're taking a selfie, you're taking a photo of yourself, right? So imagine for those of us who are a little bit older, who remember the day where we had these things that were actually called cameras, right? And they had this strip thing that you put inside. Eve, you remember that day, right? Yeah, right? Imagine you take one of those cameras and you take a photo of yourself, right? So why do we take selfies? One is to express how happy and wonderful everything is, right? Another reason why we take selfies is for all these reasons mentioned. Maybe to get people to leave us alone, maybe in Muhammad's case to find someone to get married, maybe to show everyone how happy we are, how wonderful we are. But I want you to think about what you feel when you look at someone else's selfie. How do you feel if you look at other people's selfies? What goes through your mind? A loser? Mashallah. What else? What else goes through your mind when you see someone else's selfie? Awkward. Okay. Sorry?
Vain.
Vain. Yeah, especially a thing to look at in a person's selfie is how big is their own face in the selfie, right? You know, if they're taking a photo of a whole crowd, are they like most of the photo or not? E, were you saying something? Were you making a point?
Exaggeration.
I'm sorry?
Exaggeration
Exaggeration of what?
of how, like the self and how, like whatever feeling they're trying to express.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? This is very much at the heart of personal media more than social media, right? Social media, I got my Facebook account, I look what everyone has on their stream, everyone argues about the same thing, and then everyone says the same thing, either on this side of the issue or that side of the issue, then people get into a fight, and then leave me alone, be friend, and then next week we're friends again, and then fights again, right? But what else is part of the process of personal media? Personal media is allowing yourself to separate yourself from everyone else, right? Back in the day, when we had these things that were called televisions, and they were as big as a refrigerator, the whole family had to sit together and watch, right? And for those of you who are even older like me, we remember a time when television wasn't even 24 hours a day. right? For those of you who are even older, like me, you remember a time before color was part of television. And the television, when you get a small TV, it was like a revolutionary breakthrough, right? And still, everyone had to watch together, right? With personal media, you don't have to sit with anybody, right? With personal media, you look at your phone all by yourself, whether you're on the train, you're at home, and not only are you separate from everyone else, you don't want anyone to see what you're looking at, right? You're putting yourself in a bubble. That in itself is not a problem, but you can imagine how many doors of problems that opens up. But that in itself is not a problem. Okay? But take this a step further. Think about another aspect of our culture, which is essentially addictions, like a culture of addictions. Now, usually when we speak of addictions, we speak of things like drugs and alcohol. But the biggest addictions in our general American society and within our American Muslim culture, the biggest addictions, aside from personal media, because everybody has personal media. You'll go to a wedding and uncles will have their personal media, right? A bigger addiction, one, is the addiction to anger. Okay? Anger is a big addiction in our society, right? And how does that play out? Anytime you want to feel something emotional where you're not happy, many of us will just resort to anger, right? Many of us will even find pleasure in anger. Many of us will even have conflict-seeking behavior. I'm not saying all of us, but I'm saying too many of us. That there is in our culture an addiction to anger, right? I have a friend who, her name is not Debbie, but I call her a Debbie Downer, because everything she seems to do, it's not my wife. Okay, everything she seems to do, she seems to find a reason for why it's horribly bad, right? I was in a call with her. It was a conference call on some organizational matter, and 2 seconds into the call, she's like, I hate this phone call, it sucks, right? I'm like, this was a good meeting. What was so bad about it? And then later on, okay, this is the worst meeting ever. And then I thought, again, why, what's wrong with it, right? But the point I want to draw your attention to is that this is a problem across the board. That of all of our emotions, we tend to have 2 or 3. Okay, this makes me laugh, this makes me cry, this makes me angry, and if it makes me cry, it probably makes me even more angry, right? And some people like to get angry when they laugh. But the point is that this is a big addiction. A bigger addiction in our society is the addiction to the self, right? So part of what the culture of personal media is giving us, part of what this culture of living in a bubble is giving us, is a way to get addicted to our own selves, right? Where if you're addicted to something that's sort of the opposite of it, you'll find repulsive. That if you find pleasure in just looking at your screen, in being by yourself, then more and more you will find displeasure in being in the company of other people. Those of us who are older, who know a life before these things, it may not apply as much to us. Those of us who are younger, who don't even know what the sky looks like anymore, unless we can see it on the screen, I'm just thinking more about them. But what am I saying here is that a major problem, perhaps the biggest problem in our greater American culture and our particular Muslim American culture, because we're all drinking the same water, is this addiction to the self. Okay? But it's a fake addiction. Okay? It's not so much an addiction to me, to myself. It's a textbook addiction in the Quran. It's an addiction to your hawa. It's addiction to your whims and desires. Okay. How does this play out? That I look at my phone when I'm in the mood to look at my phone. I get in an elevator, there's 5 other people there. There was a time where you greet everyone, hi, how are you? Maybe that's it, you maybe get into conversation. And then there was a time where you just get in the elevator, you don't talk to anybody. Now what happens when you get into an elevator? Everybody pulls up their phone, as though you're really important and you're getting a signal in the elevator, right? Right. But what is it actually? You're trying to stay away from communication, you're trying to stay away from awkwardness, you're trying to stay away from being questioned, you're trying to stay away from being critiqued. Okay? What's part of the addiction to your whims, your hawa, is exactly this desire that if I have an appetite, I fulfill it right away, right? You all know this, instant gratification. Okay? But the type of gratification we're looking for is something that we get through the screen, So what is this specifically? It's a feeling of a particular type of control. Good. Let me give you an example of how it plays out. Another big addiction in our society is an addiction to pornography, right? Now, why is it that someone's addicted to pornography? Part of it is biology, good. But part of it is control, good. Because it's not like, okay, here's the pornography of the day. Someone is looking for something particular that they want to see, okay, in a particular way, right? That's control. And you may think you're looking at a human being, but what are you doing? You're reducing the human being to the fulfillment of your own appetite in that moment. So what I'm saying is that deeper than these addictions to social media, deeper than all that, is this addiction to the self, but deeper than that is an addiction to control. Okay. And then you get into Ramadan. At the heart of Ramadan, you're giving up your control, right? Because when you're not in Ramadan, okay, if you're in the mood to eat, you eat. If you're in the mood to look at something, you do it. If you're in the mood to do whatever, you do whatever, right? Ramadan, it's the opposite, right? You shut yourself down, right? Ramadan, you're saying, even though otherwise I have the ability to do such and such, I can't. And this is even more difficult sometimes than just refraining, because you're saying, I can do this. This, all I have to do is press a button and I get what I'm looking for, right? But I can't. It's kind of like something is standing there taunting you, okay? Like the case, for those of you who know the story of the people of the Sabbath, okay? This is the people in the previous generation prior to the prophet, peace be upon him. They'd go in for worship on the day of Sabbath. They weren't allowed to work, and then they noticed the fish kept coming up to the shore, right? And then they did a few things to try to work around the rules. But it's like those fish were coming up to the shore, taunting them. You can't catch us today, right? So where is the control shifting? It's shifting away from me exerting myself onto something else to me shifting my control over myself, right? Now, having said that, let me bring us back to general American culture and then back to Ramadan again. Central, again, to our American culture in terms of goals, aspirations, ideals, is this ideal that you're your own boss, right? That's a big part of American culture. Nobody can tell me what to do. What else is part of this? This idea that I should find my fulfillment, okay? That to be myself authentically, I should feed whatever it is that is this yearning within myself, and that will allow me to feed myself, to be myself authentically. That will allow me to be in fulfillment. The problem, again, is that is just another variation of addiction to the nafs. How? Because when I'm seeking to be myself, when I'm seeking to fulfill who I am, like I got this yearning, I want to be this is who I am, this is what I have to do, and no one can tell me otherwise. That person by definition is going to be unhappy. Why? Because the nature of the nafs, the voice of the nafs, the voice of the self is always feed me. Okay? Every one of us has this innate self, the nafs, and it's always saying feed me. So what happens when you feed yourself? It's saying feed me again. Okay? Meaning, let's say you're really addicted to shopping, you really love to shop, right? You go to the store, you buy something, and for those few moments, you feel great, right? You know, physiologically, dopamine gets rushed, and then you're great, and then what happens shortly after that? You have to buy something else again, right? Because your nafs is saying, feed me. Okay? And then you feed yourself again, you're happy for a moment, but then very quickly you're unhappy again. That's the nature of the self. And that's the challenge of trying to find your authentic self. Is your authentic self a fulfillment of your nafs? If it is, then by definition, you are not going to be a happy person. Now resort this back to anger, you will often take it out as anger. But what happens to such a person in Ramadan? And not everybody, for many people who have that outlook, who have that conditioning. When in Ramadan, you're not shutting yourself down. And that desire to be unhappy is blocked. You might find other reasons to be unhappy, right? I talk about my Debbie Downer friend. But the point is, that when we have this culture of narcissism, this culture of self, either it's a culture of power, where you're trying to exert power over something or someone to fulfill your happiness, but then you need to re-fulfill it, or on top of that, it's just a culture of feed yourself, feed yourself, feed yourself, feed yourself. And what is part of the goal of Ramadan? Take control, not of something else, not of someone else, take control of yourself. Good. Let's take this a different route. Ask yourself, when you think of the Muslim community, this is just answers for yourself. Ask yourself what you think of when you think of the community. Good. When you think of the community, do you think of the community as a bunch of people who are wholesome and hardworking and humble? Or the other end of the spectrum, when you think of the community, you think of the community as a bunch of people who are backwards, stubborn, bigoted, arrogant, right? Now think about this. The community itself is a very large population. Okay? So you'll notice whatever you want to notice. So for example, here I am, mashallah, looking at a group of people, and I could see in you whatever I want to see, right? I could see, wow, all these people are here because they want to hear me talk, right? It could be something like that. Or look at all these people who are fasting. Or look at all these people who on a Tuesday afternoon are coming not only for food, but they're coming to learn something. Or I could say, look at all these people who are trying to mooch off a free meal. Whatever it is, right? But the point is, whatever I see in you is my choice. Which means what? Whatever I see in you is actually reflecting what's taking place in me. Thus, when I look at the whole population of the community, what I see in the community is actually a reflection of what's taking place inside of me. Because we have everything. We have the best of people, we have the worst of people. We have people who work really hard for wonderful things. We have people who work really hard for horrible things. We have people who don't do any work for wonderful things and for bad things, what have you. We have literally everything in our community. So you see whatever you want to see. It's there. You'll hone in on, you'll connect to whatever you want to see. Which means what? What you're actually connecting to is something that's inside of you. So what you see in the community is actually a hint of perhaps what's taking place inside of you. Right? Now this doesn't mean that, all right, if I see the community, I don't know what I'm going to do. If I see the community as a bunch of horrible people, I'm a horrible person. Maybe, maybe not, but it's something to be aware of. Or if I see the community as all these wonderful people, that means I'm just full of sunshine. Maybe, maybe not. But again, it's something to be aware of. It's a way to take a look at yourself and bring it even closer. We have a teaching of the Prophet, peace be upon him, that brothers and we, by extension sisters, are mirrors of each other, right? And how is that commonly understood? That what you see in your brother in faith, what you see in your sister in faith, is actually a reflection of you, right? So if you see another brother or sister and you decide, okay, this is their flaw, without barely even knowing them, chances are you're seeing something in yourself. You're projecting it onto them. Good. But I want to share all this, not, again, to be a Debbie Downer. The point is to take these moments to figure out what you need to work on. Okay. So now let's bring us to this hadith of Jibreel. So most of you know the hadith. I'll just give you the ultra simple version of it. The companions are with the Prophet, peace be upon him. One morning, some come to say it's a Thursday after Fajr, Allah knows best. This man comes in, they don't know who he is, they can't recognize who he is. He goes through the whole crowd, he sits right in front of the Prophet, peace be upon him, asks him a series of questions. What is Islam? What is Iman? What is Ihsan? Give us signs of the end of times. Then he gets up and he leaves. Okay? What is Islam? What is Iman? What is Ihsan? And signs of the end of times. Now, if you look at the response the Prophet, peace be upon him, gives, and combine that with the understanding of what Islam is, what Iman is, what Ihsan is, Islam in the most simple sense, we mean submission. In the answer, it's the 5 pillars, but in the most simple sense, what is it? You do things in belief because something outside of you is making you do it. Okay? What does this mean? That you are praying because you're supposed to. You're fasting because you're supposed to. Or you're praying, you're fasting because you want to get rewarded, that's outside of you. You don't want to get punished, that's outside of you. Maybe your Muslim culture is telling you this is what you're supposed to do. It's coming from the outside in. Okay. What is Islam then, essentially? It's a process of taking control of yourself. Okay. But the influence is coming from the outside. Okay. Islam to Iman to Ihsan. Iman is commonly understood as the realm of the Aqidah, of creed, of Islamic theology. Now, what are you doing? You're getting your body in line, now you're getting your mind in line. It's straightening out your heart. Okay. When you move from Islam to Iman, what else are you doing? It's coming from the outside in, and instead now it's going from the inside out. Okay. But what we're saying is that for most of us, you got to start from the outside in. Okay. And what am I saying here? That we often fall into the trap of saying, okay, I pray and I don't feel anything. Okay, I fast and I don't feel anything. But what is our spirituality, especially in fasting? It's getting all that stuff that clouds your thinking out of the way so you can think clearly. Meaning, if you're not feeling anything, especially at this point in Ramadan, and especially next week, you're actually probably doing the right thing. Look at how clearly you can think after day after day after day of fasting, right? This is purely physiological, or primarily physiological. You know, the food coma you get from Iftar, or the carb coma you get, you're reducing it, and you're going to be a sharper thinker. Because what is the goal? The goal is to see reality for what it really is. As opposed to looking at reality through a narcissistic, a selfish lens. But back to Islamic Iman and Ihsan. So what we're saying is that when you're moving from the body to the mind to the heart, that's what we're saying is, in this paradigm, the goal of becoming authentic. Right? So at one level, authenticity in our general culture is you feed your appetite, you obey your thirst, and that'll help you become who you are. And we're saying, yeah, you're probably not going to be happy that way, because your thirst doesn't end. Okay? On the flip side, we're saying you take control of yourself. This is fasting. You take control of yourself, and when you go through the month of Ramadan, you get miserable. Okay? You get really, really unhappy. I mean, it's not a pleasurable thing. It might be exhilarating for some, but by and large, it's boot camp, right? It's like you're training for a marathon. It's like you're training for the Olympics. It's miserable. And it's like you're taking yourself like a towel and you're just straining all the water out of you. And you're the towel, right? That's the experience of fasting, but what are you removing then? You're removing, hopefully, things that clutter you. Okay? And so, when we're moving in that path, what else is taking place? You're focusing less on yourself. Okay? You remember how hungry you are, but chances are, the hunger that you had after fast, day 1, day 2, was probably a lot worse than the hunger you have right now. For most of us, because now you're getting used to it. Hunger of fast 1, hunger of fast 2, hunger of fast 3, miserable, right? Your body is adjusting. You don't want anyone to talk to you. You know, I, mashallah, moved from 2 kids to 5 kids just like that, and it's like, be quiet, right? You know, I mean, I still say that, right? I gotta teach them. But anyway, so the point is that you're forcing yourself into a type of selflessness. And the first step is that you're not allowing yourself to be selfish. But what else is part of the process of moving from Islam to Iman to Ihsan? You're giving up your will. Now, what do I mean by this? That again, part of our goal is I'm going to be my own boss, nobody can tell me what to do. We're saying, okay, God can tell me what to do, right? But what else is that saying deep down inside? That there's control bigger than my control. That there is a world bigger than my world, right? That I am small. That I am insignificant. If you can embrace a feeling of being powerless, if you can embrace being powerless, you're liberating yourself. I'm not talking about institutional power, stuff Muhammad likes to talk about. I'm not talking about that stuff. Right? I'm talking about when you live your life, you're understanding that part of the design of life is things are going to be thrown at you, right? And your job is to just keep walking. Sometimes your job is just to get out of bed, right? But life is going to keep throwing things at you. And when you're on social media, it's going to drive you insane, right? It's your feed. And what's your feed? Every moment, every headline you look at, something being thrown at you. Well, what are you doing? You're embracing the fact that this is stuff I have no control over. That is one of the most powerful positions you can have, when you can embrace your powerlessness. Saying, having been through that, because you're liberating yourself from trying to make everyone be like what you want them to be. You're liberating the world from trying to be like the way you want them to be. This is the type of freedom that, if you can accomplish that, will clear your mind from this. But take it a step further. One of the fundamental ways to move from the selfish to the selfless, as we all know, because this is fundraising season, is to give. Okay? To give of what you have. And every one of you has something, because the prophet, peace be upon him, says even a smile is charity. I should say this, for those of you who've ever been to Jummah, you know how nobody smiles. Imagine standing in front giving the khutbah, and everyone is, and that's when they're not fasting, that's when it's a full stomach. Right? And then you mention in the khutbah, a smile is charity, and we should all smile now. Right? But what I'm saying is, if you want to develop within yourself further selflessness, you have to give. And you have to find something to give. If all you have is a smile, then that's what you start with. But what happens when you give? Right? We're taught infaq. Giving is a cure for nifaq, hypocrisy. How? Infaq is saying, I give and I'm okay. I give more and I'm okay. And what is it doing? It's breaking your attachment to the wealth that you have and shifting it to your attachment to the one who gave you the wealth. It's breaking your dependence upon the wealth that you have. Again, wealth is not just money. Wealth includes a smile. And it's shifting your dependence to the source of that. So a suggestion to think about, if you are able to fast, or if you're not able to fast, is figure out what you can give, even if you feel like you have nothing to give. Because everybody in this room does. Because you obviously had the time to give to come here. Right? Further, what else takes place? In the process of moving from the selfish to the selfless. He said, one, you're giving up your will, your desire to control everything. Another, you're just giving and giving, which means you're breaking your attachment to everything. Okay? Another is service. Okay? Service on the terms of the person you are serving. Okay? About a third of the way in the Quran, we have a teaching of the Prophet, peace be upon him. Meaning the Prophet is being told to tell his companions, to tell all of us, and thus when we speak to him and speak to each other, that when you speak, don't say, look at me. Rather say, look upon me and listen. See the difference? Don't say, look at me, as in, give me your attention, pay attention to me. Instead, look upon me towards how I can serve you. And then, listen. So what else am I saying here? Figure out a way to serve a person on their terms. Figure out a way to serve a person according to what they're seeking. Those of you who are parents, you already do this. Right? Like when you have 1 kid, 2 kids, 5 kids, mashallah, you see each of them has a different personality. This kid you raise that way, this kid you raise that way, this kid you raise that way, so forth and so on. Right? Take it a step further and look to people around you and find a way to serve a person according to what they are seeking. in the way of what they are seeking. But what is it that's going to make it so hard? This brings us all the way back to step one. It's going to be yourself. Because it's embarrassing. Because it requires you to get out of your comfort zone. Because it requires you to humble, potentially humiliate yourself for someone else. Back in the day, when a teacher would take on a student, a teacher would require the student to go through this whole process. Like, you got to sit in garbage, and you got to go wait for people to walk by and figure out how you can help them. You know, we don't have that as much anymore because now the teacher won't have any more students, right? Because we're all so full of this self. But what I'm suggesting to you, if you can do any of those, one, embrace your powerlessness. Figure out where you have no power. And make peace with it. Rather than be angry with it, rather than be depressed about it, embrace it. This is how God set it up for you. Okay? Doesn't mean you have to remain powerless. I'm saying embrace it where it is. Or what? So you got this one. Before that, give. Right? Figure out what to give. Okay? Why? To break your attachment to your wealth. Right? We say you put your wealth in your hand rather than your heart. Okay? Or you own your wealth rather than your wealth owning you. You guys know all the cliches, right? But better than all that, figure out how to serve someone. So now what we're going to do, we have a few moments left. We're going to take another selfie. Okay? This time, again, all of us, take out your cameras, take a selfie, but either you don't put yourself in the photo, or you just barely put yourself in the photo. Ready? Okay, do it right away. Begin. I call them late selfies. Right. Put my forehead. So I'm saying, if my talk was of any use, you have to either not be in the photo or be a very minor, tiny, tiny part of the photo. Tahara's like, how could I do that? I'm Tahara.
So it's not a selfie, it's somebody else's.
It becomes a we.
Oh no.
Now, I would tell you to post it on social media, but the heck with social media. Do what you want with the photo, right? Okay, with that, I think we have only a few minutes left. We have literally like 2 minutes left. So I'll stop here. Hopefully, this short talk is of some use and some benefit. And spend the last few moments making dua to Allah, especially if you make dua to Allah to decrease yourself. That might be a good one. With that, wa akhir da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. May Allah Ta'ala bless you all in your endeavors. May Allah Ta'ala bless you in your struggles. May He bless you in your service as well as your self-care. And may Allah Ta'ala reward all of the efforts of Omer and family in July. Wa akhir da'wana.